Do you feel like you're failing motherhood, friend? Then you belong here. Click the link in the show notes to join the club and support the show. You are making it possible for this podcast to reach more moms. See you in there.
Major guilt. Because I'm like, if I had taught him more properly, or I had this idea that it was genetics, that, I passed it down to him that he's anxious this way. Do you talk about failing motherhood? That was definitely the epitome of that for me at that moment, was feeling like I failed as a mom, that I wasn't processing what I needed to process for myself. So now I was having to be waited upon and helped out. And then my son, same thing. I'm like, it was just like a double whammy all at the same time that it was a lot to handle at that moment.
Ever feel like you suck at this job? Motherhood, I mean. Have too much anxiety and not enough patience? Too much yelling, not enough play? There's no manual, no village, and no guarantees. The stakes are high. We want so badly to get it right. But this is survival mode. We're just trying to make it to bedtime. So if you're full of mom guilt, your temper scares you, you feel like you're screwing everything up, and you're afraid to admit any of those things out loud, this podcast is for you. This is Failing Motherhood. I'm Danielle Bettman, and each week we'll chat with a mom ready to be real, sharing her insecurities, her fears, her failures, and her wins. We do not have it all figured out. That's not the goal. The goal is to remind you are the mom your kids need. They need what you have, you are good enough, and you're not alone. I hope you pop in earbuds, somehow sneak away, and get ready to hear some hope from the trenches. You belong here, friend. We're so glad you're here. Welcome to Failing Motherhood. My name is Danielle Bettman, and on today's episode, I'm joined by Chantel Allen. Chantel is a mama of 4 and a certified life coach who helps moms tame their anxiety once and for all. She's on a mission to show moms they are always in control and how important it is to get help to be able to help others. Welcome, Chantel.
Hello. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for your time today.
Yeah. It's going to be a fun conversation, I think.
Yes. As soon as I heard your story, I was like, I have to have you on the podcast because unfortunately, anxiety plays such a huge role in motherhood.
Yes, it definitely does. It's, I think, something every single person, whether they have like a massive problem or not, can identify with having anxiety at some point. So yes, I
definitely.
agree.
And if you didn't think you did, motherhood will definitely
Yes.
point it out.
Yes, for sure.
All of the reasons to have anxiety once you have kids. I would love to just hear your relationship with anxiety, and we can kind of start from the top of like, what did those first few years of motherhood look like for you?
Yeah. So I have 4 kids and they are very close together. So I have a 14-year-old all the way down to a 9-year-old. And I like to always tell people my second was 15 months apart from my first.
Hey, me too.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Was it a mistake? Not a mistake. I don't like to say mistake. Was it a surprise?
It was a surprise.
Yes. So same thing. So I think it was like, I was getting used to my first still for a little bit. And then it was like, hello, here's another one. So I think it was like almost immediately starting having some anxiety about 2 littles and kind of going through all of that. And then I had obviously 2 more pretty quickly after that. And I had this idea that I was like, let's just get it done. Like, okay, I already had 2 close together. If I'm going to have the rest of them, I don't want them spaced out. Let's just do it. And so
You're a brave soul.
Yes. And I'm grateful for it now, but definitely at the very beginning, having 4 littles was a lot, like a lot, having to try and navigate, potty training and trying to figure out discipline. And because every single one of my kids, and I'm sure every mom can identify, is completely different. So what I figured out with the first one didn't work for the second or the third or the fourth. So it was a lot to figure out. Yes, I know. So, and the books didn't ever help me. Like it was ideal, but then they wouldn't follow the books that I had followed. And so it was always a problem for a little bit. So that's basically, I started right out of the gate having a lot of issues with anxiety. I wouldn't have said it was anxiety at the time, but looking back, I'm like, oh, it was definitely anxiety that I was experiencing as I was having just so many kids close together. So
yeah, you're just trying to keep your head above water at that point.
Oh yeah. Sleep. I don't even know what that was for, 6 years probably. So
oh my gosh.
Yeah, but it's all right. I'm here now and I survived and they survived. So that's a success, I think.
Yes. Hooray.
So.
I'm sure not without its hiccups.
No, not at all. And I'm still figuring it out. So yeah.
Yeah. So then what happened? Like how did you hold on and survive?
I when they talk about mom fog or brain fog, I'm like, I think I was in that for years. I mean, even so I'll give a brief background of my story, but I was living in Phoenix, Arizona for a while, and then the housing market in 2008 crashed. And so we lost our home unexpectedly. And I always call it like the 7 plagues that happened. We had a lot of things happen at the same time. And we lost our home. My husband he lost his job. This is when my son was born, my second. It was 15 months apart from the other one.
Oh my gosh.
And then I had a surprise appendectomy right in the middle of it. So I was only 2 months after my son was born. And then we had to move to a new town because his dad, my husband's dad, had some issues. And so it was like this culmination of so many things at the same time. So we moved to a small town away from everybody, and we were not making ends meet. And so I decided to become a preschool teacher. It's been a passion of mine forever anyway. So I became a preschool teacher and started doing that for a couple of years. And I just thought I was going through the motions. Like I was trying to raise my kids. I was trying to make ends meet, all while dealing with family issues. And I literally thought like, this is just normal, right? Like normal things, normal stress. I was a hustler. And I was at church one day and I stood up and I passed out.
Oh,
and they
no.
thought it was like just low blood sugar. So they rushed to my aid with some fruit snacks. And they're like, here, suck on some fruit snacks, see if that helps you. And I stood up and then I proceeded to have a series for the next 24 hours, a bout of grand mal seizures. And
oh, no.
And I was living in this small town. I'm still here now, but our small town, I mean, I love them, but they just don't have very good facility to be able to handle that type of situation. So they had to fly me to Phoenix, Arizona, and ran me through the gamut of all the tests. Because I had also been suffering from major migraines probably since I was like 8 or 9 years old. It's just been something I've always suffered with. And so they were thinking maybe a tumor, maybe.
How scary.
Yeah, it was scary. So we got there, get all the tests done, and they came back and like, everything's clean. And I'm like, okay. I mean, it sounds like good news, right? It sounds like that's the ideal thing. But I think there was a piece of me that was like, if I could find something, there would be an answer to what was going on. Nope. Instead, the doctors walked in and said, basically, you have what we call anxiety seizures. And your body is not processing the way that you're handling your stress and your anxiety. So it's coming out in this form. So you've got to figure out something else to do, or you're going to either have a heart attack or you're going to have more seizures.
I have never heard of that.
I know. And you know what's so crazy? I had never heard of it either. But now that I've had it and I've been telling my story more, so many more people have been coming out of the woodwork like, I thought I was the only one. And so there's so many more people that are coming out saying they identify with the fact that they've been having seizures for unknown reasons.
Wow. How scary to not have an answer or explanation for that.
Yeah. So I didn't think I was anxious, but now I was anxious about my anxiety about like trying to figure it out. I was also very resentful too, because I was, why me? Why did I have this? Everybody else has the same type of stuff, right? Like I said, I thought it was normal. Why did my body have to do it this way?
Yeah.
So it was very, very difficult for, a couple of years probably after that, trying to mitigate what I didn't think was a problem in the first place and trying to navigate that. So then I found, I don't know if any of your listeners have ever heard of Jody Moore. She's a life coach and has a podcast. And I stumbled upon her because I was grasping at straws. I Googled, I was doing all the things like, what do I figure out that I don't know what to do?
Mm-hmm.
And I started listening to her podcast, and she started talking about the fact that anxiety doesn't come from, money. It doesn't come from your family members. It doesn't come from your kids. It really comes from what you're thinking. And it's, at first I was like, I get it, but I don't get it all the way. And I just started playing around with it, and it started to click for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to see how it was totally possible that my anxiety wasn't coming from a chemical imbalance or something that I was doing wrong. It was just coming from the way that I was feeling and my lack in ability to not process my emotions the right way. So once I started to do that, I started to see how it actually was really, really beneficial. And also at the same time, my lovely son who is my little surprise child, he started experiencing major panic attacks and anxiety attacks at school. So here I was going through my situation. My son was going through his situation. So it was almost like this added motivation of like, I've got to figure this out for him and for me. And so I started passing along these tools to my son. I'm like, hey, I'm doing this. You do this. Let's see if this works. He had done counseling. We tried him on some medicine. And I think those are great for a lot of people. And there's a definite avenue for that. But this gave the tools, like something that he could apply in the moment to be able to help him navigate that. And so after I saw that work with him and with myself, I started having this passion of like, okay, more moms need this, not only because they experience anxiety, but I know kids are coming up in the same environment and they're having the exact same stuff happen to them. So if we can educate the moms and have them understand their anxiety in a whole new level, then we can pass this down to our kids. And it's just kind of like this ripple effect that I'm just super passionate about making sure it happens. So
wow,
that's my story.
I love it because I'm sure that there are so many women out there that will just keep keeping on if it's just for them.
Yes.
But if they see their child being affected, or it becomes so much more real when they know that it's being passed down, that that gives you so much more motivation to figure it out. And if you can help them through the process, then you're going to do what it takes to help yourself too. And so it sucks, I'm sure, in the moment to realize that, you know, he's already struggling. I'm sure that you had guilt with that.
Major guilt. Because I'm like, if I had taught him more properly, or I had this idea that it was genetics, that, you know, I passed it down to him that he's anxious this way. And so you talk about failing motherhood. That was definitely the epitome of that for me at that moment, was feeling like I failed as a mom, that I wasn't processing what I needed to process for myself. So now I was having to be waited upon and helped out. And then my son, same thing. I'm like, it was just like a double whammy all at the same time that I just, it was a lot to handle at that moment.
Yeah. And you're like, what? If this is just what motherhood is, why can't I handle it?
Right. Oh, I had so much judgment against myself about, you know, everybody else seems to be doing just fine. Why me? Why is this the way that it seems to go down? So, there was a lot of judgment, resentfulness, anger. I mean, all of the things that were going on at the same time. So,
So how did it feel then to get the different perspective that was, you know, shared through Jody Moore's podcast? You know, was that like a breath of fresh air, or did that feel even more convicting? Like, how did you take that?
Yeah. So at first, I definitely did not want to take it on, because when you start to understand that you are the only reason why that you feel the way that you feel, it's almost like a little gut punch of, okay, you're causing all of your pain. Like, you think it's your spouse, you think it's your children. So we kind of go about trying to control them, right? Like, if I can just get them to behave, or if I can get them to be happy, then I'll feel better. And when I started to realize, no, none of that needs to change. It's just the way that you need to think. It was almost like a bummer. Like, dang it. You know, now I have to be responsible and kind of grow up a little bit and become responsible for how I'm feeling. It took me a little bit. It wasn't like this light switch effect of, oh, I totally make sense and I go all in on it. It was kind of a trial and error of, okay, I'm going to try this. I'm just curious if this would work. And I had a lot of resistance to it, but I did start to see it over time. It was probably a couple months of me listening, getting ahas, what I always call, like, there's a difference between an aha and actual results. And lots of ahas, but I wasn't willing to actually do the work to get the results right away. And I think that's normal for a lot of us. Like, I see the ahas, but I don't see how it actually applies to my situation. And so when I finally was like, I've got to do something, like, this is a possibility, I can have something happen again, I was willing to kind of dig in and give it a go. And it was very uncomfortable and it was very hard, but I can see that I was uncomfortable to begin with. So I'm like, I'd rather have the uncomfortable that's progressive than the uncomfortable that just kept me stuck. Right.
Yeah. Because that progress of those little wins, I'm sure created a snowball of momentum in the right direction that kept you going.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it was good. It's still, I mean, I'm still uncomfortable. I think everybody, that's one of the things too, is I think we try and struggle to get to the point where we don't struggle. And if we can stop thinking that and just being like, no, struggle is part of the journey, struggle is actually part of the growth, then it drops the resistance to it and you can actually enjoy the struggle. Like, you can see it as something that's a gift instead of it being a problem.
I'm sure that's hard to wrap your mind around.
Oh, it very much is. And especially in the middle of it. Like, you don't want to sit there and be like, this is for my good and this is a great thing.
I'm loving it.
Yeah. Like I said, even for a couple of years after my seizures, I couldn't even talk about it with my husband about it because I was so angry and it caused a lot of emotion. So I think in the moment, if someone had come up to me and been like, this is a gift for you, you're going to learn so much from this, I probably would have punched him in the face. But now I can look back on it and be like, I'm so grateful that I did go through that and see the growth that I came from. So it is, I mean, it's perspective, but it's when it needs to come too.
Yeah. So dive into more of what that work looks like then. Like tangibly, what kind of things shifted your mindset and how did you grow?
Yeah. So like I said, what Jody Moore teaches, and now that I teach, is that your thoughts are the only reason why you feel anything. So you have a thought that basically produces chemicals in your body that come out in the form of anxiety or frustration or sadness or joy. And I think a lot of us think it's our circumstances that create the way that we feel. My husband said this, now I feel this. And we forget there's a missing gap in between us. So you have a circumstance that happens, and then you have a thought about that circumstance that actually produces the way that you feel. And why that is so great is, like I was saying before, we no longer need to control or change or get anybody else to do anything different for us to decide how we want to interpret that circumstance. So now I teach people to kind of slow down, to look at their circumstances of what's going on, and then show them there's an opportunity for them to look at it in a new way. So when your son, is getting an F in school, it's not, I'm failing as a mom. It's, okay, how can I look at this in a new way that might give me more opportunities to help him, but also still show up as the mom that I want to be? Because so many times we become like at the effect of the situation as opposed to I'm still in control no matter what the circumstance is. Mm-hmm. So I go about teaching people just to slow down and start becoming the observer of their thoughts. And I like to think of it as like you're the scientist kind of digging into a new species to see, why do you think that thought? What do you make it mean when you think that thought? Mm-hmm. And that you are not your thoughts. They're just thoughts that are running through your brain. And then being able to teach people how to feel their emotions, which sounds so airy-fairy. I'm like, it sounds so like woo, 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 but it's so powerful because no one tapped us on the shoulder when we were in high school or in college and was like, hey, you know these emotions that you're not feeling, you need to start learning how to feel them. And it's not in the way that we think. Like when I talk to people about anxiety, they think they've been feeling their anxiety. Like they have the racing heart. They have the, all of that stuff. They think that's anxiety. It's not. It's your resistance to it that you're actually feeling. So it's learning how to go in. Yeah. So I like to think like the way I explain it to all my clients is if your anxiety was a beach ball, it can sit on top of the water and just float around easy. Like it's not that big of a deal. But what we do is we see that anxiety and we're like, no, I can't do that anxiety. It's too freaking, it's like freaks me out a little bit. We shove it down under the water and causes all of that resistance. And then that's how you get the panic attacks and the anxiety attacks because you can't hold it down forever. It's going to come out in some way. And everybody's is a little bit different. It can be panic attacks. Mine never was. Mine was just a special case and it was just like, let's go all in and give you some seizures.
Yeah, why not?
But a lot of people have migraines. A lot of people have stomach issues. A lot of people have eczema or IBS. Like there's so many things that are coming out now. There's like anxiety is the stem of this and your body can't handle it because you're resisting it. So it's going to come out in some other fashion. So that's what I try and teach people is rewiring their whole experience with all of their emotions and then teaching them how to look at their thoughts.
That's powerful.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. Did you know you can have fun with anxiety? I don't think people understand that.
No.
So that's
I'm sure that's hard to to take that away from this conversation and then just go and apply it on your own.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's the biggest thing is like, I always like open yourself to just maybe, possibly she's right. I wonder if she could possibly be right. And then just go like, think about it, but also I'm just going to try it. I'm just going to try one thing that she's talking about, or I'm going to be more curious about that. Mm-hmm. Because as soon as we just like, it's not possible for me, or there's no possible way, you shut yourself down to being able to see any other possibility.
Right.
So that's my biggest thing. And like, we used to be curious all of the time. And somewhere along the way, we stop being curious about it. And so we hear something, and because of the way that we've interpreted it in the past, we just shut ourselves down to, no, it couldn't work for me. There's no possible way. So I always tell people, just be curious. Just be more curious about it. And how would you look at it from a curious perspective of maybe she's right? Or what else can I learn that might, show me evidence that this is true? Or, just letting yourself to be open to possibility.
Yeah, because the alternative is medication.
Same. Yeah.
Or more the same. Or, trying to talk it out in therapy. Had you tried any of those methods?
Yeah. Yeah, so I tried therapy. And again, like I said, I think there's a place for therapy. But what I noticed again was there's no tools to kind of do that. So I always think of it as, okay, go to therapy if you need it. But as far as moving forward, get a coach or somebody that's going to help you navigate the present and the future with that situation. And then even medicine, I'm like, I'm all in for the medicine. I think people need that for chemical imbalances and things, but your brain is still the same brain that's taking the medicine. So if you have thoughts about your anxiety, it's not going to solve your anxiety. You have to be able to work around those thoughts about the medicine, and then it'll actually work.
Yeah.
So it's like added benefit to it.
Right. It could almost work more to more beneficial together in junction with each other.
Yes. It was like I don't know where it is for you, but here in my town, there's the weight loss surgery that is going like crazy right now. The lap band, I don't even know if it's a lap band or sleeve or something like that. Everybody is going and getting the surgery thinking this is going to solve my problem for, how I feel or what I look like. And it's been a couple of years for some of them, and they're starting to put the weight back on because this quick fix, it can work. I think it's great for so many people, but the same brain that created the problem in the first place is still there in the body that you just did a quick fix for. So unless you fix that, you're going to still repeat the same patterns. Right. So it's the same thing. We have tools, but learn how to use that, how to think about those tools so that it does work in your benefit.
And we're not taught it at all.
No.
There's no class.
No.
In the curriculum.
No. And I think as also, if you think about in school, we were taught other people hurt our feelings. Like, Susie, you hurt Susie's feelings, go and apologize to Susie, or vice versa. Like hey,
we're the
did she
victim
hurt your
of
feelings?
The circumstances.
Yeah. So we've been taught that other people can create the way that we feel. So it makes sense why as adults, we still stay that same way. So, but it's like learning, okay, that doesn't benefit us anymore. It doesn't benefit us to think that other people can control the way that we feel. Because I'm sorry, but the people that I see around me, they're not doing a very good job at controlling their own emotions. So for them to be responsible for mine, it really doesn't work. So we've got to start taking back the responsibility and showing ourselves, I am not the victim in the situation. I'm actually a hero. Like, I can decide how I interpret everything that's going on around me.
So what does that look like for you right now while you're parenting? How are you teaching it to your kids, and how are you managing to kind of take responsibility for your own part?
Yeah. So at first, like we were talking about before, at the very, very beginning, I definitely felt like I was failing probably on a daily basis, especially with lovely social media. I love social media, but we compare ourselves a lot on social media. And I think anytime that my kids would, do anything that I didn't think was part of the plan, I would think I was failing at something. So I think now learning how to define success for me as a mom based off of what I control, not based off of what my kids do or don't do, has been a game changer. It's not based on, I'm not successful if my kids are happy today, or I'm not successful if they succeed in life, because that's so subjective and I cannot control whether my kids are happy. I mean, think about it for ourselves. Like when we wake up, there's days I don't want to be happy. So don't try and talk me out of me not being happy, So we have to start defining it for ourselves. That's within our control. And I think that was the first big thing for me was now, because I have three things that define success for me as a mom. I decide what I'm going to teach my kids and ensure that I teach my kids. Here that I didn't say that they learn this stuff. It's just that I have decided I will teach these certain principles, whether they learn them or not, that's fine. So I teach what I need to teach them, which is about their brain or about our religion or, just good human qualities that I think that they should instill on. I also decide how I love them. Does not mean they feel my love. It's just, how do I want to show up today that shows that I feel the most love for my kids? Whether they interpret that or not, is totally on them. And then I also like to just keep them safe. Again, I will give them rules and boundaries and expectations, but I don't base my feelings on whether they do that or not. And I just know that they're going to probably still not want to follow the rules. And that's okay. It has still nothing to do with me as a mom. So it's constantly just keeping me in check with, this is what I can control. This is what I can't control. And I know some people are probably like, that doesn't seem like a really good place to be. I'm like, it's freedom. It's freedom to know that we're not supposed to control our kids the way that society makes us want to think that that's true. So it gives my kids more responsibility. It gives them more expectations that they are the ones that make themselves happy. And I am now constantly being an example of that. So I'm very open with my kids about how I'm feeling. I'm feeling frustrated right now about what I'm thinking, or I'm thinking something that's causing me to feel angry. I don't blame my emotions on them anymore. I used to all the time, like, go clean your room so that I can feel happy again. Or you didn't do your chores, so I'm very, very frustrated. I take responsibility, but I'm still showing them I do still have negative emotions, and it's totally okay. So that's the biggest thing, is open communication, teaching our kids things about our emotions, about how we're thinking, and giving them responsibility.
Oh my gosh. I love that. Like, preach. Because I point that out to parents all the time that, yes, society looks at us in Target with eyes that make us feel like certainly we should be able to control our children.
Yes.
And that is a completely elusive lie, because you can't control another person's actions, and we can only control our contribution to that relationship. And if we look at the other side of that as our report card of how we're doing as a parent, then we're certainly going to feel like we're screwing it all up, because, it does not translate to all of the behavior that we want to see all of the time. And if we judge that behavior, we're going to feel terrible. But that is normal behavior. Mm-hmm. That is the way that this relationship is supposed to go. They're supposed to push boundaries, and they're supposed to find their voice, and they're supposed to do all those things that kids do. Yes. So we need to just let them do that and, take a look at what we're responsible for. And those 3 things are so well thought out. I'm going to write those down and put that up on my wall, because that really does sum up our responsibility of our role as a parent and our relationship. Mm-hmm. And we can just keep going back to those 3 things. Am I doing those 3 things? Great.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's also knowing that those things they will change with you as a mom. So what is safety for me as when my kids were a toddler is going to look different for them when they are a teenager. So I think that's the beautiful part of it too, is it does kind of graduate with you as a mom as you go through the different stages with your kids. And it'll be different if you're a grandma, and if you're a mother-in-law, and all those things, you can still keep those same 3 principles all of the time and not base it off of what they do in life or, anything. So I think it keeps you in a really, really responsible and safe place, I guess you could say. So it is. It's wonderful. So.
Yeah. And we have probably an added asterisk while we're functioning as the homeschool teacher right now of I'm going to teach them, but that does not mean that they are absorbing it and learning it and mastering it. I am just going to do what I'm supposed to do and then hope for the best.
Well, and I think to speak to that is I think right now sometimes we feel pressure to be utilizing more of the time to be present with our kids. I need to entertain them more, and I need to do it. And I'm like, or not, or we can just decide that those are the 3 things, and they can be bored. It's totally okay for them to be bored, and it's totally okay for them to resent you for not entertaining them more. All of that, it's a game changer when you can really appreciate that from a different perspective.
Yes, because I can define that as the way that I'm loving them today is by allowing them to be bored. Yes. Because I do see that as a huge win, and I know that they need that for their development. So check mark. Yep, doing my job.
Exactly. Yeah.
So clearly you're full of wisdom, have so much to share. What other advice do you feel like, you really want moms to take home that are feeling the results of holding that anxiety at bay? And, what do you hope for them to be able to learn through your story?
I think the biggest thing that I can offer to them is that they are not alone, for one. I think so many times anxiety, we feel very isolated with it, that no one else can understand it in my way. And my way is really like the story that I shared is very, very extreme, but it is like if you start talking to your neighbors, you talk to your friends, everybody can relate to how you are feeling. So I would just watch that little thought that says that you're alone or that there's something different about your story, because in essence, it's going to keep you stuck. It's going to keep you hiding. It's going to keep you from the ability to go out and actually see that you're not alone, that your anxiety doesn't mean you're broken in some way. And so I think to me, I'm like, let anxiety be a gift. Let anxiety be something that you can go and learn from and then become more of the mom that you want to be. Because anxiety is not a problem. It really isn't. I think so many times we forget that anxiety is here to keep us safe. We didn't have anxiety, we'd be running in the street or running off of, buildings or all that. Like, it's here for a purpose. We just have to manage it because our brain has followed us from, like I always say, from the caveman days. The caveman days, it kept us safe from predators and from other people that were trying to hurt us. So it hasn't evolved the same way that we as humans have. So when we're sitting at the table and we're starting to freak out about going over to our mother-in-law's for some reason, you can start to be onto it and be like, oh, I see you, anxiety. You think that this is something I really need to pay attention to. It's okay. I can do some anxiety right now, but I also don't need to respond to it in this way. And I think that's the biggest thing is changing your relationship with your anxiety. Can you become friends with it in a new way that shows you that it's not there to hurt you? It's not the redheaded stepchild. It's there to be your friend. And if you can open yourself up to that, then you won't struggle. You won't have the unnecessary suffering that you're having.
Yeah. So I keep going back to that beach ball image because I just think that it makes so much sense. Yeah. So what's another like practical way that with that inner dialogue, I can let the beach ball just be?
Yeah. So can I give your listeners a kind of a tutorial walkthrough? Is that okay?
Yes, please.
Okay. And this is something that I do with my clients for one, but I also do it with kids. Like kids, this is something so powerful that you can use to pass along to your kids, especially when they're going through big emotions, anxiety being one of them. So what I do, if you think about what I said before, your thoughts are what create your anxiety. So that's going on in your head. You have some kind of like what if scroll that's going on like crazy when you're in this what if anxiety loop, right? Mm-hmm. So we want to get you out of your head and into your body. We want to stop that scroll for a second and just showing yourself that it's totally harmless what you're going through. So I do what I call a body scan. And you start at the top of your head and you work your way all the way down. And you start asking yourself, okay, where do I feel this emotion? Is it in my head? Is it in my shoulders? Is it in my stomach? Is it in my legs? And you let yourself just go inside and see where it's at. And everybody's version is going to be different. But mine for anxiety is a lot of it is in my solar plexus, in my chest area, in my shoulders area. And then I just tell myself, relax into it. And when I'm doing this with my kids, I get a little bit silly with them because they have to really see that we tense up against it. But parents, we need to do this too. So like I tell myself, relax your ears, relax your nose, relax your lips, relax your jaw. And it's crazy as you start to really visualize and say that out loud, you will notice how tensed up you are against the emotion. So if you can just sit back and say, okay, relax. And you, again, do a scan all the way down. And then you start describing it to yourself. Now that you've relaxed into it, what does it look like? Is it red? Is it slimy? Is it sludgy? Is it open? Is it constricting? And you just start describing it to yourself. And I think of it as like the Inside Out characters from that movie, Disney movie, Pixar.
I love that movie.
Yeah. We want to describe in a picture form what your emotion looks like. And kids, they eat this up. They're like, oh yeah, this is awesome. And as for parents, it starts to get like, this is a little weird and we're a little bit more resistant to it. But I'm like, you have to try it to see why it is so powerful to be able to do that. Because you're getting yourself out of your head. You're getting yourself into your body to see, oh, it's not that big of a deal. It's okay. It's just this feeling that's going on inside of my body. And I like to think of it as like if someone came down from another planet that had never experienced anxiety before and was sitting next to you and it was saying, oh my gosh, you look like you're having a panic attack and it looks like you're tensing up, like resisting it a lot. This must be really, really powerful. What is this emotion? And you describe it to them. I always think of the Martian being like, so what you're telling me is it's a little bit of a pounding in your chest. It must be really, really like, is it going to kill you? And it's like, no, it's not going to kill me. Like it starts to really show you kind of make it ridiculous about how much we tense up against these sensations in our body. So it gives you it like almost separates you from you and what you're experiencing, and to show you, oh, it's not that big of a deal. It really isn't. It's just my heart racing. It's a pressure in my chest. It's, yellow. It's sludgy. And you can tell yourself, I can do that. I can totally do that emotion. And every single time that I do that for me or for my kids, it doesn't make it go away. It's not like it's gone completely. It's like that beach ball that we were talking about. Now it's just floating on top of the water, and you can totally do that. You can breathe into it. You can let it be there and just get curious about why it's there at that point.
Okay.
So that's my favorite exercise ever.
Yeah, that I can go and apply tomorrow, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Well, and here's the other part of it too, is do it with your good emotions. We forget that, like, we want to do this only with the negative ones. I'm like, do it with joy. Do it with happiness to show you like what it feels like too. Because again, we are creating that. It's not a happy day that just happens to you. You create that. So you want to see also how that feels in your body too, to show yourself like, I can do that too. So it's both sides.
And that emotional feedback and that emotional literacy was just not taught to the generation that is parenting right now.
Yeah.
And
or the parents before that.
Right.
I think that's why we have the problem.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so we are in a spot of trying to teach something that is still very new to us. And, you can't give what you don't have. And so if this is something that we want our kids to grow up having mastered a little bit better than we have, we do have to take on this journey and do this work right alongside them.
This is one last analogy I can leave you with. I really like to think of it as us as moms, we are the flight attendants for our kids on a plane. And if we are confident and we know what our anxiety is and what it is doing, or any of our emotions, then we can be that person that's still taking care of our kids who are passengers in in their seats, and, getting them what they need, getting them a blanket if they need it. But when the turbulence comes and they start to have struggles or problems, we can be that confident, calm, flight attendant that's sitting in the chair showing them, oh, it's not that big of a deal. It's okay. Like, obviously she thinks we're going to get there just fine. Instead of thinking, I got to solve this. This is, the plane's going down. We don't ever see a flight attendant being that way. So if you can start thinking of yourself as that way of like, take care of yourself first to get to the point where you are okay with what's going on and trusting that the turbulence is not going to hurt your child, then you will have a completely different journey and experience along the way.
Yes, because as passengers, we base our thoughts on how the flight attendant is doing the same way our kids do. And so if we see a flight attendant freaking out, then we're going to think we're going to die for sure.
Exactly. And I used to be petrified of flights, and I would watch like the flight attendant, like, okay, she's calm. Okay. And it didn't take away my anxiety, but I'm like, it's all right. I can talk myself at this point and know that it's just my brain going crazy. And it just gives you a whole different perspective of it. So
I'm so excited for moms to hear this and just to find the hope that there are things that you can do to really understand what's going on in your body and be able to have a better understanding of what those thoughts are doing to those reactions, and just be able to master this just a little bit better for our kids, because we all want to do better for our kids. And that alone will be the motivation to also not feel so terrible all the time and full of anxiety.
Yes. Well, and I think it's also like I was talking about before, just the less resilient or resistance to the negative. Like, you can embrace the negative too. It's okay to have a bad day. And if you know that, then you take the suffering off of it. So I'm like, I'm all in for the bad days too. So
yeah. So there isn't an illusion that you're just completely anxiety free now because you're a coach, right?
I have anxiety every single day. Every single day. Now that I know what it is, I wake up with it. But now it's just like, I think of it as like I'm putting it in the back seat of my car instead of it being the driver in my driver's seat. Doesn't control the music, doesn't control the destination. It's sitting in the back seat whining. And I'm just like, yeah, I hear you. I totally hear you. What's going on? But we've got things to do and we're going to go do this. So it doesn't take away your emotions, but we can control them when we understand them.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay. So the last question that I love to ask every guest that I have on is, how are you the mom that your kids need?
I loved this question. When I saw that in the form, I'm like, that is such a good question. And I think sometimes when we think about failing, this is one of the questions that come up of like, I'm not the right mom for my kids. And so I think it's a choice of literally just believing deep down, no matter what the evidence wants to be opposing it, I'm like, no, I truly trust and believe that I am the perfect mom for my kids. Not that I'm a perfect mom, but I'm the perfect mom for my kids. And I see that, as I was talking about before with my son with his anxiety, I'm like, I am so grateful that I'm his mom, that I can be the person that helps him out. And I start to see that, like, what we think, we create. So if you believe you are the perfect mom for your kids, you are going to see the evidence of that, and you are going to be able to think in a way that's completely different than thinking, I'm not the right parent for my kids. And then you start to shut yourself down. So to me, it's a choice. It's like, I just decide wholeheartedly, I am the perfect mom for my kids, and just move forward with that.
Yes, exactly. Oh, good for you. That's what I hope that every mom listening does.
Yeah.
They see that choice and they make that conscious effort. So I'm sure the listeners will love to connect with you more offline as they're applying these takeaways and just needing someone to hold their hand. How can they connect with you after they listen to this?
Yeah, so I have a podcast too. I forgot to even mention that before, but yeah, I have a podcast. It's Living and Loving Your Life. It's a podcast for moms, but I also have a private Facebook group on Facebook. It's called the FYBY Tribe, FYBY Tribe. And in there, we dive into these tools. It's free coaching. It's free trainings. It's just so much stuff because, like I told, it's my passion. I want to get this out to as many moms as I possibly can. So come join the group and get working on this. Like, let's not have the ahas. Let's get you some results and come join me in there.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time and for each one of the strategies and for sharing your story. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
If you experience anxiety, I hope by hearing her story, you were able to gain one new tool to manage it going forward. Let that beach ball float. And of course, always remember that you are the mom your kids need. Next episode will be an extra special Father's Day edition. Both you and your hubby will not want to miss. I hope every single episode serves you, supports you, and encourages you. If you're loving the podcast, subscribe, leave a review, tell a friend, and support the show. Thank you for coming on this journey with me. I believe in you, and I'm cheering you on.